Hi, and welcome to Hull Estate and Succession Planning. You're listening to episode 144 of our podcast on Tuesday, December 23rd, 2008.
Hi, Suzana.
Hi there, Ian. How are you today?
Just fantastic, thank you.
That's good. Any closer to having finished the Christmas shopping?
No, it's only the 23rd. I got 2 full days ahead of me. So please feel free to give us some feedback. We will be even watching our feedback over the festive season. And at hullandhull@gmail.com.
Or you can visit our blog daily at estatelaw@hullandhull.com.
So we are 2 days from Christmas, but we are fully into the holiday season. And we thought, given the fact that under the tree for some of us may be some wonderful gifts, but gifts that that's right. But gifts that may carry with them some nostalgic presence, in the sense. The topic today is going to be about discussing really where we go when we're dealing with administering assets that are personal property items, and how do we deal with the special gifts that sometimes arrive in the holiday season or sometimes arrive in the regular season.
When you talk about personal property, Ian, what exactly are you referring to?
Well, we're really just focusing on paintings or tables or chairs, things, not real estate. And unfortunately, in our contentious world, we see too much of a fight over these things. Mm-hmm. So to underestimate it, I think, is a mistake. To overestimate it can be a mistake too, as anything in life. Treat your personal property with moderation. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we see as a classic initial tool, and let's talk a little bit about before death and a little bit about managing these assets after death. But we start with the premise that these are emotional items. Mm-hmm. They were given at times such as Christmas time, or at times during someone's life when someone's not well and they offer up the family heirloom or the family painting or something like that to one of their children. They pass on the Rolex watch, that kind of thing. So they bring with it this mystique. There's a cloud around them of importance. And what we'll often see prior to death is someone will put in their will a specific reflection of how to deal with your personal assets.
And it's interesting because I tend to see, certainly in my experience, more times where people are really specific about their real estate, where they're saying this property will go to so-and-so, this large things like, for instance, the automobile will go to such and such. But when it comes to the particular individual things, like, for instance, jewelry, I tend to focus on jewelry. But in those kinds of situations where you're dealing with something that may have an emotional attachment to it or a specific memory attached to it, and you'll be surprised, I think, how often people won't go so far as to make that specifically directed to go to someone. They'll just say, all my jewelry will go to so-and-so. Or they'll say, many times we see that it'll go in accordance with a list that I include with my will. Mm-hmm. And then we find the will, but we never find that list, it seems. And so I'm always surprised that as much as these things matter to people during their lifetime, they somehow get overlooked when it comes in the planning stage. And so once things need to be administered, it becomes that flashpoint because we haven't had the opportunity to put thought to where it actually should eventually go.
No, it's a really good point. And so really, one of the things that we can do is put it in our will. Mm-hmm. Put in our will that this is who I want to have this ring or that ring. Mm-hmm. You can take it to the next step, and a lot of lawyers will say, well, look, just make a list and say, like you say, I'll attach it to my will, or I'll have it in the safety deposit box or something like that. So there's a way to organize it.
Right.
And allows for what you're saying, of hopefully avoiding some of the tension as to who's getting what, and when there are specific items. All right, so that's a drafting answer. Mm-hmm. One of the other answers we consider, of course, during lifetime, and we're talking pre-death gifting, and that is literally giving it to them and making sure that Betty gets the Rolex watch that your grandfather gave down the line, or some precious item. I'm using a watch because I don't, I'm sure rings or anything like that, there's necklaces and things like that. But so the gifting during lifetime. And when we do that, though, it seems to me that doing that in secrecy can create a lot of problems.
Right. And another alternative to that, and to avoid that kind of problem, is to actually talk about it during your lifetime. We always talk about how important it is to tell people during your lifetime what it is you'd ultimately want and why it is. So you can, and I know you call it sort of the sticky identification kind of mechanism, where you'll walk around the house and on the back of a painting you'll say, this painting is to go to so-and-so, and that portrait is to go to such and such, and that piece of jewelry is earmarked for this individual. And I think that helps too, because if people know, then it's going to cause less friction at the end of the day.
No, it's so true. I mean, it's sort of the hybrid of it is either, instead, say you don't want to give up the ring of your grandmother's ring while you're alive, but you say to all the kids, or they know in some way, communicate to them that, Betty is going to get the ring when I die, and you don't have to give it up, but you've made it clear that that's how you want to do it. The yellow sticky or the Post-it note behind the paintings is another way where you don't actually gift it, but you identify your wishes, and that's a less formal way of doing it, but can be very effective. And we find that most people with good common sense and dignity will respect the choices of parents, and if they want to make choices, it's a nice thing to do to communicate them during lifetime. So we have the option of putting in our will, sort of hiding behind the will. We have the option of outright gifting, which is the option of literally giving up the item before you die, because maybe you're just not wearing that Rolex watch anymore anyway. And then the third is this sort of middle point where you identify it in some way and express with communication tools what you're going to do, so that it's not just in a will buried to be pulled out, bad use of the term buried, to be pulled out after death. Those are just some suggestions, and there are others, and we can't be exhaustive on this. We're just sort of brainstorming on that front. The other thing then let's talk about is post-death. How, as an executor, or even as a family member, but let's use the executor as an easier example. How, as an executor, do you manage this, what can be a hotly contested issue in an administration of the assets?
Well, Ian, I know one of the things that we tend to tell clients right from the get-go when we talk about their responsibilities is the fact that they have to make an inventory of the assets of the estate. And that really comprises everything. That is the properties, that is the bank accounts, that is the contents within the house, that's the paintings, the jewelry, the pots and pans, the forks and knives. It's really an inventory of everything. And part and parcel of that, of course, are going to be all of these items that maybe we know might be flashpoints, or maybe we have no idea there'll be flashpoints, but they've got to be identified. And so I know we've talked in the past about some ways to do that as a part to the old-fashioned way of just writing everything down. And perhaps we could just share some of those suggestions with our listeners.
Well, that's right. And I think really from our standpoint anyway, anything you can do to protect yourself in that moment, if you're the executor, is a good idea, because you just don't know. If there's been a nice elderly person who has lived a great life and gradually downsized to the point where they're in a small condominium, they've only got a few furnishings left, but you don't know that desk is an 1812 antique, and you end up sending it to Goodwill, you're going to create some problems for yourself. That's an easy identifier, but you may not know that the great-grandfather passed it down. It's not worth anything, but it's got tremendous value around it, emotional value. So we really do recommend that once you take on the job of executor, is that you properly inventory. First is maybe just go in, let's take different levels. One is you can go in with your own video camera or your own still camera, take pictures of everything. That's another one. And then the other second part of it, a more formal way to inventory, is also useful.
And that's when we have people will actually go into someone's home and make that very detailed list for you. And they'll include as part and parcel of that many times a value of the assets as well, which is helpful when it comes to applying for probate or quantifying the value of each particular item that's actually found within someone's home.
So use a professional or do it yourself. Professionals like Waddingtons and Sotheby's will come in and do that inventory, or do it yourself. All right, so we are enjoying, looking forward to seeing some of these gifts under our respective trees, hopefully, that will torture our family members in making sure that they pass on to next generations. So we want to thank you very much. All the best for the holiday season to our listeners and our viewers. And please feel free to give us any feedback at hullandhull@gmail.com.
Or again, visit our blog at estatelaw@hullandhull.com. Happy holidays, everyone.
You have been listening to Hull on Estate and Succession Planning by Ian Hull and Suzana Popovic-Montag. The podcast you have been listening to has been provided as an information service. It is a summary of current issues in estates and estate planning. It is not legal advice, and you are reminded to always speak with a legal professional regarding your specific circumstance. To listen to more Hull and Hull podcasts or leave any questions or comments, please visit our website at hullestatemediation.com.